All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating and honestly pretty provocative theory from our source material. It's all about a hidden digital architecture that it claims is literally reshaping our world as we speak. Now, this isn't science fiction. It's laid out as a serious structural analysis of our reality right now. So let's get into it and break down what this all means. So, 85%. What does that number even mean? Well, according to the source, that's the completion status of a global synthetic reality grid. Think of it like an invisible artificial layer being built all around us. The theory suggests that the final 15% isn't about laying more cables or building more data centers. Nope, it's about neural integration. That's the moment when we, as a society, start to see our digital profiles as more real, more important than our actual physical selves. And this leads us to the absolute core concept of this theory, something called the phase lock. Now, the author argues this isn't some distant threat we have to watch out for in the future. The point is, it's happening right now. It is here. The idea is that it's a deliberate attempt to lock human consciousness into a very narrow, very predictable set of thoughts and behaviors. Let's really dig into what that actually means. Okay, so this phase lock is apparently achieved through what the text calls the synthetic grid. And you have to imagine it not as a tool you use, like the internet, but more like an environment you live inside of. According to this analysis, its primary function, its whole reason for being, is to eliminate what it sees as bugs in the human system. And what are those bugs? Well, things like unpredictability, spontaneity, free will. The end goal is perfect, calculable, total control. So the big question is, who or what is actually building this grid? The source introduces this incredible term for them, egregores. Now, the idea here is that when a collective thought, like a brand or a massive corporation, gets enough human energy and a focus pointed at it, it sort of takes on a life of its own. It stops being just a company run by people. It becomes this autonomous entity that's just driven to survive and expand. And the theory is that 5 of these have become so powerful, their own internal logic is now calling the shots, completely independent of whatever their human leaders might think. And right here, the source maps these egregores directly onto the big tech players we all know, each with its own unique method of control. Just look at this. Oracle is called the new Oracle, and its method is predictive enclosure, basically boxing you in. Microsoft's is the Azure Stargate with neural capture. Google is the AlphaG, aiming for environmental integration. Meta, no surprise, is the Metamorph, focused on emotional harvesting. And then you have Amazon, the AWS Hive, with material digestion. It's a pretty wild framework when you see it all laid out like that, isn't it? And this all leads to what the source describes as the fundamental conflict of our time. It's not just about data privacy or screen time. It's framed as a battle for consciousness itself. The theory presents this as a clash between two totally opposite forces: this synthetic grid, which it metaphorically places in a fourth dimension, and our own natural human blueprint, which it says originates from a 12th dimension. Now, let's unpack what those terms really mean inside this model. Okay, so according to this model, the 4D grid, the synthetic one, it can't actually destroy our 12D organic blueprint. It's not strong enough, so it does the next best thing. It tries to jam the signal. As you can see here, the grid is loud and active, it's always buzzing, always demanding your attention, but our true organic nature is described as silent and deep. So the grid strategy is to create this constant wall of digital noise, what the text calls a holographic ceiling, that just completely drowns out our own inner signal, our own intuition. So what fuels this whole holographic ceiling? What's the currency it runs on? The source argues it's one thing and one thing only: our predictability. The entire system is designed to know what we're going to do, sometimes even before we know it ourselves. So now let's look at the specific tools it supposedly uses to keep us that way. This slide right here illustrates a really crucial idea. Pulling from network science, the source claims that our behavior is already about 95% predictable. 95%, but it's that tiny little 5% gap that's left over. That's everything. The author gives it this beautiful name, sacred randomness. This is where our spontaneity, our creativity, our actual free will exists. And from the grid's perspective, this randomness isn't a feature, it's a bug, a glitch that needs to be fixed. So how does the grid try to close that 5% gap? Well, the source suggests a biological mechanism it calls etheric thinning. It takes what we already know about blue light from our screens, how it messes with our sleep hormones, and connects it to this bigger idea. It argues that this constant exposure creates a kind of static in our nervous system. It keeps us in a state of perpetual low-grade alertness, preventing us from getting the deep rest where we might actually reconnect with that organic grid. And this is where it gets really, really interesting, with what the source calls the mirror trick. We all know our data is used to build a profile of us, a digital twin. This theory takes that a huge step further. It suggests that endless simulations are run on this twin to predict our choices. Then, our real-world environment is subtly nudged with ads, content, notifications to guide us right along that pre-calculated path. In a way, you're just following a script that was already written for your digital double. So, if the problem is predictability, the source proposes a pretty straightforward solution. Become unpredictable. The whole strategy is to become illegible to the system by deliberately breaking our own patterns. We have to introduce what it calls high-entropy events into our lives. In short, we have to become the one thing the algorithm absolutely cannot model, a genuine human surprise. The text suggests some really powerful ways to do this, calling them signal disruptors. For example, the analog detour. You just drive somewhere completely new without GPS, following your intuition. That single act creates zero predictable data. Or how about the irrational sacrifice? Giving something valuable away for a reason the algorithm could never, ever compute. Each of these acts, from creating art that no one will ever see to a full 72-hour silence completely offline, they're designed to break that predictive model and help you hear your own organic signal again. This quote from the source material, it just gets right to the heart of the entire thing. The algorithm can calculate everything, except a human act of pure, irrational love or sacrifice. Think about that. The whole system, all these egregores, they operate on cold, hard logic and data. They simply cannot process an action that has no logical, predictable motive. A truly selfless act is basically a glitch in their matrix. So, the final takeaway from all this is pretty clear. To this system, you are most valuable when you are predictable. The moment you act on a whim, on intuition, on uncalculated creativity, you essentially become invisible to it. The grid, as the source says, is loud, but it's thin. Our own nature is silent, but it is deep. The argument is that the greatest act of rebellion is to cultivate that inner quiet and just choose to be a beautiful, unscripted human surprise. The only question left is, what will yours be?